Talking About My Generation, the podcast with Lee Scriven and Del Bromham.
Hello and welcome to Talking About My Generation. Myself and a superstar rock legend, Del Bromham.
That'll be me.
That'll be you. And here to talk about stuff that our generation talk about in a nutshell. And proving that fact, I've had a great weekend, Del. I don't know about you. I'll come to me first and being a bit rude, but granddad again.
I know.
My
Congratulations.
third grandchild, and it's such a wonderful thing. I'm still up there. I'm still flying. I should get used to it now, so it's my third. But little girl, Florence Scribbo, I call her. Florence Scribbo Holmes. And much to my daughter's annoyance, did arrive with my camera on the first day. I'm just thinking, no, you're not tired. I'm coming over with my camera and got a lovely photo. So it is. They do, on a future show, perhaps we'll talk about the effect of that grandchildren do have on you, because we are talking about our generation, and it's something our generation will probably will like and whatever. But yeah, great with that. Yourself, what have you been up to?
Me, I haven't been gigging for a week or so, and
Wow.
This weekend I had the weekend off, and I was doing very domestic things like cutting the grass.
Yeah, lovely.
And
I like cutting grass, actually.
and it's funny because, you know, my other half says to me, I want some stuff planted, and initially you don't want to get your hands dirty, but as soon as you get your fingers in there,
So cutting the grass, do you do a Wembley 66, or do you just do little hopper bits? You know, I have to do Wembley 66.
I try and do stripes.
That's it. That's what I'm on about.
That's Wembley 66.
That's Wembley 66.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I do try and do stripes.
Yeah, the English obsession with their lawn.
I'm getting like my dad as I'm getting old.
I
even
love
wake
it.
up at stupid o'clock.
Yeah.
Well, so, I might get in from a gig and I wake up 3 hours later. I thought, no, it can't be that. And I always used to wonder why my dad used to get up at stupid o'clock. But now,
That's
I'm
what
the
we
same
do.
as me dad.
That's what we do, isn't it? I've seen, I don't know if it's fake news, I don't know if you might be able to clarify this or not. I keep seeing stuff about the Kinks possibly recording and
Yeah.
reforming again. That'd be great. Great.
Well, it could be. I mean, it's including Mick Haver, the drummer, as well.
Oh, excellent.
Because Pete Quaife passed away. But it's funny, actually, because I used to know the guy who managed Tears for Fears. Mm-hmm. And this is about 25 years ago. He was trying to get Ray and Dave together. And the problem was, up until recently, they wouldn't talk to each other.
His brothers, isn't it?
So he said, it's ridiculous. I'm trying to get the Kinks together. He said, and I've got to have a meeting with Dave on one day and Ray on another day. He said, how's that going to work? But no, but I mean, if they've mended all their differences, then great.
That'd be great, wouldn't it? It's one band I think we've talked off mic or perhaps on mic about how corporate modern day concerts are and how expensive they are. So it sort of puts me off a little bit. But I'll be honest, if Kinks come up, I will go, and I do care what I'll pay, but I will pay decent money to see them because they are just a fantastic band.
I mean, Ray Davies had the knack of almost putting a filmscape, a cinemascape into a song.
Yeah.
You just, when you heard those songs, I could picture what he was singing about.
Yeah.
And
I mean, that guitar
is
sound, was
genius.
that really one of the notches on the ladder of rock music, wasn't it? You really got me.
It sort of started the real rock thing. I mean, I must admit, I think I was probably about 12 when that song came out, and it was, you know, up until that, guitars have been quite tame,
jingly,
strummy, and all of a sudden this thing fell out on my dad's radio. You know, what the hell's that? You know, and certainly I think there's a few tracks like that actually. You know, you've got from the '60s, You Really Got Me. The Beatles actually with Day Tripper. But interestingly enough, we tend to forget that about a year, 18 months before that, we had Roy Orbison doing Pretty Woman.
Yeah, that's a great guitar song. I just think that the Ray one it's really raw.
Yeah.
It's very raw, isn't it? It's great. Anyway, great. Another band back on the scene, Pulp. It's good to see them back. And apparently they're number one, which I don't know what number one means anymore, but I don't know if that's number one in streaming or album charts. But great, if you're number one in something, you should
I
celebrate
was
it.
watching the BBC over the weekend, and they were talking about Pulp, funnily enough, and they were saying that the I don't know if it's advanced tickets or the popularity seems to be, particularly in America of all places. I never thought America would be somewhere where the Pulp would be famous.
Yeah,
but apparently,
I'm with you on that,
there's a lot of interest
Great
in
front
tickets.
man, great front man, Jarvis Cocker. Great English institution.
Yeah.
Which again surprises me what you're saying, that
British.
he's really, really popular in America. I wouldn't have thought. He hardly looks like a rock star. He looks like an accountant who's sort of got a drink problem or something. Really. He's a remarkable man, great man. Sort of remarkable men. Ode to be in Liverpool over the weekend. Bruce Springsteen playing with Paul McCartney turning up. That must have been good.
Yeah, that was good. I mean, it's funny. You regardless of what people might say about him, whether he's as good as he was, etc., etc. That guy, it doesn't matter about the money or anything. He quite clearly loves music.
Yeah,
he does
loves
everything,
playing as well.
And he's put loads of money into. You've got to remember, he's put a load of money into the institute up there in Liverpool.
Yeah. That's fantastic. That must have been great. I may say, just what I said before about modern day concerts being so expensive and a bit commercial, but you wouldn't have been complaining if you'd bought a really good seat and then suddenly Macca turns up. I think they went busking as well in the town, which I saw a clip.
Yeah,
that would have been.
They popped into a little, a little place where they had kids in there learning musical instruments and things. I think it was. They got in to see him. No, I think that's great.
Talking of Macca, I noticed came up on my internet or social media that's a Band on the Run anniversary. I don't know what 53 or whatever many years it was ago. Band on the Run. It was number one in America this past week.
74, 75?
Yeah, 73, I believe.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, I think it came out because I'm thinking, hang on, I thought it came out near Christmas because I remember it so well that my mum and dad asked me when I was in Walthamstow, what do you want for Christmas? And it's Band on the Run because I was a massive Beatles fan then, absolutely huge. And I remember it sort of being on the top of my mum's wardrobe for like a month, and I just kept getting hold of it and looking at it. I didn't dare play it because I knew they'd have known that I'd nicked the Christmas present, Great album, really good album that, wasn't it? Really. I remember that was the one that sort of as if Paul McCartney needed reconfirming, but I think it did that, didn't it? He was like, here we go, this is okay, we can get over the Beatles now in a way.
It's funny, you just reminded me about albums and things. I mean, I can say this now because the people have now passed away, so they can't be nicked by the police. But I can remember when Help came out, or before Help came out. The chap who lived across the road from my mum and dad, he worked for EMI, and occasionally things used to come out the back door. And I remember my dad got a copy of Help, and bear in mind those times are very different, and it was always very secret squirrels. Or I've got a copy of the new Beatles album. It's not out for another month, but don't tell anybody. I've gone into school, and I've gone. It was turned out to be Steve who ended up being the singer in my band originally. I said, you never guess what? I've got the Beatles' new album, Help, indoors. But don't tell anybody. No, right then. You never guess what? Dell's got a copy of Help.
You didn't need the internet, did you? He didn't need the internet. That was a good album. It's a new one for you, and I'm going to bring in our young producer as well on this. I meant to sort of add this on last week when, these first couple of shows, it's really getting the listeners to sort of know about us really and know about what we like and how the show's sort of going to pan out.
They can always view me on Crime Watch.
Yeah. But I always thought there's, I always love my time machine where you can go back in time and see some of the greats, but I've always thought it'd be a great wish to say you can bring one rock star back of your choice. And I'm split a little bit. And the reason on this is that the first one that comes into mind is obviously John Lennon. Or perhaps, John Lennon. Oh, yeah, I'd love to see John Lennon back and playing solo shows. And obviously him and Paul McCartney standing together would be magical and all that kind of thing. But then I'm thinking, well, the good thing about, I think, not anything good about passing away, but one of the sort of pacifying things of it is that John Lennon knew how much he was loved and how much he was musically revered. He was like a god, really, to everybody.
Yeah.
So that had me thinking, and there's two musicians who came to mind who for me left the building, should we say, call it that, left the building, not really knowing, I don't think, how much musicians and the great general public really loved them. And the ones who really come to mind for me, and I can't split them apart, is Mark Bolan, who I think would be an absolute musical phenomenon. In that the Glastonbury Legend stage, they could sell 400,000 tickets, I think, if Mark Bolan topped it. Seriously. He's just grown in because of his brilliant legacy. And then the other one on an equal footing would be Steve Marriott. And I know you knew Steve Marriott, and I wondered if you still... who would you bring back? Or perhaps you agree with me, perhaps Steve would be the one to get back and see and physically feel the adulation that people have for him.
Yeah, I agree with you. Actually, there are many, but Steve is one of the people I would certainly like to bring back. I mean, it was funny because when I last met him or last spoke to him, he was really excited because he'd just come back from America, and he'd been talking to Peter Frampton about recording and getting Humble Pie back together again.
Oh wow, that would have been good.
Because they'd had all the business stuff sorted out with Dee Anthony, who was the former manager. He was a bit of a Don Arden character, like.
Yeah, well, that was the thing with Steve reading his book, and you probably know a lot more than me, that he was one of those artists, a bit like the Kinks in a way, who just. I'm not saying they got mismanaged because they rose to the top of the tree, should we say? Yeah, but he just felt, with a little bit more better management, the Small Faces would at least had another 2 albums in them, at least, and then perhaps would have, if the manager would have been around a little bit longer, would have, after they'd split up, because it was inevitable bands were going to split up in the 60s and go their own ways, but perhaps come back. But I always felt that with him reading his book. Would you agree on that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's I can't remember the title of it. The Peter Frampton album that came out not long after Steve died, and there's a couple of the tracks on there that he recorded, and you can hear Marriott singing. But I understand what you're saying about the comparison between him and Mark Bolan, but not just only musicians of my age, but I don't know anybody in the music industry who knows of Steve Marriott who doesn't put him right up there.
Yeah,
arguably in the top 3 of the best British rock and soul singers.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
And he could. I mean, I saw him. I remember I went up to see him play at Hammersmith Odeon, and he was doing this song, and he just walked off of the microphone and walked down the catwalk and was singing in the Hammersmith Odeon without a mic, and you could hear him. And I think I told you the story where I helped him move house. From the Beehive Cottage, little cottage, and that was a lovely little place. Helped him move house, and I had the van because this was the guy. It wasn't actually his manager, but he was looking after his business interests. Another guy called Laurie O'Leary. He used to run the Speakeasy Club.
Oh right. And
he phoned me up and he said, "Oh, have you still got your truck?" So I said, "Yeah." He said, "Steve Marriott's moving house." He said, "You couldn't help him, could you?" So I said, "Yeah, all right." And so we got the band truck, got the stray bus, and we moved him. Well, then Steve went his way, and I went my way with my mate Pete, and we took the equipment to a garage just round the corner in Bethnal Green, in the next street to where a certain Violet Cray was living at the time. Because I did actually know those people as well, but that's another story for another day.
Yeah, right. I'll make a note of that.
So I phoned him up, and he was staying at the Royal Kensington Hotel.
Oh right.
And I said, "Hi, Steve." I said, "Just to let you know, all your stuff's at Laurie's place." So he said, "All right then." I said, "Look, that Humble Pie drum skin that he was going to throw away, because and I said, "You sure you don't want it?" He said, "I don't even want it." So I got the Humble Pie drum skin, and he said, "What are you doing tonight?" I said, "Well, I don't know why." He said, "Oh, I'm down at Maison Rouge Studios." He said, "I'm trying to get the Small Faces back together again."
Oh right. For that what?
This is about 79.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get the Small Faces back together again, and he had Rick Wills, who had been playing with Foreigner, playing bass for him, because Ronnie couldn't do it. And so he said, come down. So I said, all right, then I'll come down. I'm going to see a Small Faces.
Yeah,
So I've gone to Maison Rouge. I'm in the studio, and he's sitting there piddling about on the piano sort of thing. And they've already done the backing track. And it's honestly one of the most amazing things I'd ever bear witness to. The other guys in the band didn't know what the melody line was for the vocal. He said, I'll tell you what, he said, let me sing a bit for you and I'll show you how it goes. So he's gone round the back of the desk and the backing tracks come on. He said, no, put it up louder. Honestly, it was so loud, it was deafening. And all of a sudden, he's just gone, right over the top of it. I'm thinking, I can't say online what I thought, but it was just amazing, and I've never forgotten that. And it's just like one people paid money to be in that room to see that. It was just incredible.
And you played with him as well. We were just talking. One of the things that saddened me it must have been the 80s, Del, I think. 80s, but I remember seeing, this is what I was on about, that, he
might have been about
he wouldn't say fallen from grace. Well, he had fallen from grace, let's be honest, but because he was playing at the Open University, a university gig in our town, in Milton Keynes, and it was his packet of three, and it was like a £5, and I remember thinking then, this is wrong, because I was
It's
so...
1985, was it?
Yeah.
84, 85.
And then, lo and as I'm telling you that story, you tell me you were a support band.
Yeah, I'd formed a little band, before...
Great band, Killer Bees.
Before I sort of started the Stray thing up again. We called ourselves the Killer Bees, we called ourselves.
Yeah.
And the gig came in. I said, "Oh, magic!" So I caught up with, and it was at that gig actually. He was telling me he'd just come back from the States.
Oh right, okay.
It was at that gig.
Yeah.
So
but he did. It was all on the circuit, wasn't it? He was around the London circuit and just playing all the time. Yeah, good luck to him. I mean, I'm not knocking him for playing. It was just I just thought he should have been playing in better venues, in my opinion, that time. And as time's gone on, people would say the same thing.
I think a lot of his problem was it was. And I speak from experience, managerial, he had bad associations, and a lot of people in the music business didn't want to get involved because they didn't know how many skeletons were in the cupboard.
I think there was the same. Mike Bolan was the same. I mean, he was playing and doing stuff. But you got to remember, this is the time when the music industry was changing. It used to change every 2 or 3 months, didn't it, fashion-wise, or 6 months. I mean, especially in the 60s, it was every 3 months. I think in the 70s, it was every 6 months. By the time the 80s, it was every year. But it was constantly changing. We had the synth pop in the 80s and, the disco explosion, these kind of things. And people weren't looking back as much as they did, we said the other week. As soon as Britpop came in, we all enjoyed the new bands, but basically they were celebrating the music of a past tense, and everyone started looking back, and then you're going, "Wow, the Small Faces, they were really good." No one was saying that in '85 because they weren't looking back. It's just what was going on. It was just a shame, and that's the bit to wrap it up. Chris, Chris is our producer, great guy. Well knowledge, good looking, etc., etc. Who would you bring back? Because we're talking about our generation. Perhaps you can represent your generation. Who you would consider bringing back?
I think so. For me, it's about whether they'd still be any good nowadays.
Yeah, good point.
And I think if you brought certain people back, they just wouldn't work with the kind of the music of today. So somebody that I think would still be very relevant is Freddie Mercury, because I think he was at the top of his game. He still had a lot of music left in him.
You say that, just to interrupt quickly, what he's saying, Freddie Mercury, I mean, going by the film, and I know the film wasn't all truthful, and you might have better knowledge of Freddie Mercury, when he sort of branched out on his own, he wasn't as powerful as he was that chemistry of Queen. Do you think? So when you're saying bring Freddie Mercury, would you say with Queen or just Freddie Mercury?
I would say, with Queen. Because I think towards the end he wasn't very well, and he wasn't really able to kind of do what he used to do with the band. So if you brought him back healthy, fit, at his prime, teamed him up with the band or with another band, but just kind of
the whole dynamic I think would have been different because they were a very tight unit. Those original 4 people, and the main reason, I don't think it's publicised. The main reason I know that John Deacon wouldn't play with the others because he was really distraught when Freddie died.
Yeah, you would be.
And he said, no, I can't do it without Freddie. So, like you're saying, if you bring Freddie back, I think the chances are you'd actually get that tight unit again.
And also, I think depends whether he's never died or if he's kind of rises from the grave, and people appreciate them now because they've been gone, and then suddenly, oh, it was all a big mistake. He's alive. And, you know,
he's at the chip shop.
Yeah, there he is
with Elvis. He's there. Yeah.
But yeah, I think sometimes it's only when people die that they get fully appreciated, and a lot of these people that died before their time.
And again, he's grown. The legacy has grown, and his fame has grown. Since his rise, I'd arguably say Freddie Mercury is bigger now than even he was after Live Aid. He's just grown because of the film. I thought the film was absolutely fantastic.
I used to buy my clothes off of Freddie Mercury.
What, Camden Market?
Kensington Market.
Kensington Market.
Up the stairs, the stall in front, him and Roger.
Wow.
Could get a nice pair of flares off of him, darling.
They're a very distinctive band, weren't they, Queen? I really liked them when they came out. Brian May's guitar sound. Again, it's what we've mentioned before. It was a new sound, wasn't it? It was a new sound and a remarkable sound. And when they were going in the studios at midnight, that was the only time they could get in the studio to make the album. And yeah, got a lot of time for Queen. They did become, in my generation, which is what we're talking about on the show, when I was, full of safety pins and God Save the Queen, etc., and I'm Pretty Vacant, they became a bit unfashionable to mention that you liked them, but secretly one of them thinking, yeah, they are still good, and they proved it. And talk about a band taking an opportunity with Live Aid. I mean, there've been documentaries on it, and we all know, but fair play to them. They knew, they knew what was coming. I thought them and U2, just there was a reason for that. They were really well managed, and they could grasp what was coming, whereas I think everybody else, even David Bowie, went, oh yeah, it'd be nice, play a few songs, and yeah, great, but no, them two, no, hang on a minute, this is going around the world, and we can make an impact. I don't think they did it on purpose. There was no callousness about it. They just were really prepared.
I've never thought about this until you were just talking, because I was around at that time, believe it or not, and it was bands like my band at the time, and Queen. And Status Quo, who opened up.
Yeah.
They were not fashionable.
No, that's just what I'm saying.
I can remember
extremely unfashionable.
Well, the thing is, I've just sort of realised this, that the people in the business who are booking the bands kind of dictate whether you work or not, right? And they decide whether you're fashionable or not. Well, the fact that Status Quo's career, Queen's career, and one or two others went up after that because that's what people wanted to see.
It was the beginning of the new era.
Yeah. As
in, we're not really interested in the new bands. We really like the old ones. And I think another thing is the state. What I'm saying about Queen and U2, to be fair to them, that great stagecraft. And that's a great example of it. Do you know what I think? As in, they just didn't go on and, we'll have a little good time. They knew how to play to a big crowd. U2, I remember, have been going around America. They were on form.
That first tour, I think they did in America. That concert they did for Red Rock.
Red Rock, yeah, there you go.
They were
absolutely brilliant. Yeah. But they had brilliant. Bono was a great manager of the stagecraft. He knew how to entertain. It was in his genes. He was just born to do it.
Yeah.
And more, the Who went on, which was they went one of their worst gigs ever. But they hadn't rehearsed for ages and etc. But yeah, Queen. That was the beginning, I think, of what I would regard as the new era, when people, and you say it was absolutely changed their lives. Changed their lives, didn't it? They went from being, Queen, and Queen. I think they went back about 3 months. But I think the following year, they sold out Wembley for 3 nights.
I think at that point, there was, I know from Status Quo's point of perspective, but 1980, wherever, 84, whenever it was live, it was, some of those bands were thinking, it might be the end of the road soon.
Yeah.
We haven't got much. We haven't got an audience anymore. Wrong.
No, wrong. Yeah.
Given the correct exposure, they have got the audience.
Well, I was still reflecting back. I'm going to change from music a little bit, and again bring in our young producer. I was watching Goldfinger at the weekend. I'm going to change it to James Bond. I mean, what a film. What a film. I had to laugh. I mean, the sort of... something they wouldn't get away with now, the opening scenes. There must have been about 300 ladies in bikinis in about 3 minutes of footage, and Mr. Bond doing things he shouldn't do. But I watched the film, and I don't think Bond's ever been better than the 60s period. I love Daniel Craig. As a film, Daniel Craig and the guy, Pierce Brosnan, all these guys were really good, but for that little tingle down your neck, and the spectacle of it. And I did read, and I think it's been confirmed that because I think Amazon have the rights now, don't they? The Broccoli's have come out of it. And what I want to ask you two people was, one of the producers was a really big producer. I can't remember his name. It's from MGM, saying he would do it if you could take it back and it'd be a period piece. So it'd be original to the book. And as soon as I read that, I went, yes, I would be in the queue, first in, to see it going back to the original time, because it all got a bit balmy with all these baddies with funny teeth and they're using the internet now. We know all that. What we really liked was that period.
I like the sort of the hint of British humour in that. The double entendres and things like this.
Yeah, which you could get away with if it was being set in that time. I mean, I think Daniel Craig trying to act like Sean Connery, it would be wrong. You'd be uncomfortable because it's of this period. But when Sean Connery was doing it, you sort of laugh a little bit, but you don't agree with it. You don't think that's the right way, but you understand why he's like that. Yeah, and I just think, I've been trying to find out because it's all very quiet, isn't it? It's all every week someone gets linked to being the new Bond. It's like and what about you, Chris? Because you're from a different generation. Would you prefer to see Bond 2026, 2027 period, or would you like to see him going back to the original period of when the books were written?
So when was that? Was that the 60s?
Yeah, late 50s, early 60s.
Yeah. I don't know. So for me, classic era of Bond was the 80s, because that's what I grew up with. Roger Moore and his eyebrows, and again, very much of its time, but a bit less serious and a bit less violent than some of the recent stuff. But I get what you're saying. All this kind of it's AI, it's internet, it's stuff. I don't think that's really a plot that works with James Bond.
It's a generational thing, isn't it? Because I mean, my partner's son he's 30, so 31, 32, and I don't think he can relate at all to what you and I. But the way it's moving on, actually, isn't it? It's taking that franchise and moving it on, knowing your market. And with the Daniel Craig films, he loves them.
Yeah.
The others are. It's almost ridiculous for him, but it almost the original ones, he doesn't kind of associate them as being like Bond films.
Right.
He does.
Okay. Well, there you go. That's what I'm saying. It's our generation, and I suppose that's a natural thing to do. I suppose your favourite Doctor Who might be John Pertwee. If you went on to a Doctor Who
William
fan
Hartnell
base, they would go berserk.
William Hartnell scared me when I was little.
He was a bit scary, wasn't he? I suppose, like Chris says, I think it's probably from the period. But I've got to say, I would love it. I mean, to be honest, I'd do both. That would be my shout. Have a modern one.
I think there's a market for it.
But do I mean, like Inspector Morse. I mean, we're going from one extreme to another here to Inspector. But I like the pre-Morse one, where the young Morse, whichever it was called, when it was set in the 60s. Again, because I've just got such a passion for that period. But I thought it done really well. But it's a good talking point. It's a great thing to have.
But it makes sense because it is based on books, and if you look at the books, they're set in the 60s. Yeah. So
what's worrying is that the early books written in the 50s, it's all about the Russians. They're still here. They're still winding us up. We're still worrying about them. Can't this be done? Can't we have a nice cup of tea with the Russians? Go, actually, we do like you. We like your oil, and you like our records and stuff like that. Can't we just have peace? I sound like John Lennon there. Okay, the other thing I'm going to skip on to, the importance of cinema in rock music. And again, Chris, stay on with this, because it's good to have the younger generation's point of view. I'm trying to think of the last film, and you might not have experienced this, Chris, that changed popular culture. I mean, good example, Saturday Night Fever. Okay, Saturday Night Fever came up. And within 3 weeks, everybody, and myself included, even though I was punk rockers and all this kind of thing, all you wanted to do was go to a disco and dance, because you'd seen it in the screen. Blues Brothers had a big effect on me that made me form a band.
Blues Brothers,
it reminded me of when I played, because I don't think I spoke about this. My musical sort of apprenticeship was playing with my dad's dance band, which I think I mentioned before. My dad had a dance band in London. And he used to just sit me in the corner of the band. I was in the band, playing congas.
Yeah.
No one could hear them. But I experienced it, and that took me back to that, because you can get wrapped up in new fashions of music, and you can just forget about the joy of actually playing music. And when I saw the Blues Brothers, I think my punk, attempt at being a rock and roll star had failed for about the 5th time with the latest punk band or indie band, and I was getting a bit down. And then I saw that, and I just thought, actually, why don't I just do that? Because I want to just enjoy playing music. So I'm just thinking, American Graffiti. That was a big film, probably before your time, Chris, that sort of brought rock and roll back into the mainstream, brought 50s fashion back in, came in.
Well,
and then the two big ones, Rock Around the Clock, Blackboard Jungle, which was the one, and then, of course, Hard Day's Night. And the reason I'm saying that is because you've got to imagine that what's different, I think, nowadays is when, say, Blackboard Jungle came out, and perhaps especially Hard Day's Night in this country, I'm not so sure about America, you might be from, it's the sound. The sound in a cinema is fantastic, and it's always been fantastic. So if you were trying to listen to rock and roll, you had a 45 on a little radiogram or whatever, not great, AM radio in this country, but when you went in the cinema, oh my God, it was like full on, big basses. No wonder they were dancing in the aisles and throwing chairs at each other.
Jailhouse Rock was the one before that.
Yeah, Jailhouse Rock, yeah.
When that one came out, there was actually, there was no internet. You very rarely saw Elvis. You just heard about him, and all of a sudden, there he is.
Yeah.
In the words of Stanley Unwin, old swivel hippie.
Huge, great screen. Cinemas were big then, weren't they?
Yeah. When you was about 9 years old, Lee, if my mathematics is right, one for my generation, a few years older than you, was going to see Woodstock in the cinemas.
Got it down here.
You got it down here.
Yeah.
That was quite something, and it's funny, all those acts that were on there. I don't know why, but I can remember one of the first ones that came up on the screen was Sha Na Na.
Yeah.
And I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah.
And
stole the film, really, didn't they?
And what was really, it was great. The guys in Sha Na Na was great because they were so not in vogue.
Yeah.
They were at the wrong festival.
They were in
like a hippie festival. And I can't say the swear word, but they came straight on stage and it was like, okay, you effing hippies, let's rock and roll.
Yeah.
It was brilliant. I remember that, and obviously Hendrix at the end. But
Sly, sadly, Sly and Family Stone. Sly Stone passed away.
Well, I was going to say about Sly.
And they were on that
Sly
bill,
Stone.
and personally, even though I know the Who show is sort of lauded as being, the great. I've seen it, and I've seen and even the Who say they've played better than they played it. It was just the occasion, but for the actual performance, a lot of people say Sly and the Family Stone.
You asked me on our previous ones. It was one of the best live acts I'd ever seen, and you've just reminded me. I didn't see live act Sly and the Family Stone in the flesh, but one band that I did see, which was Larry Graham, Central Station. That's the bass player. And when his band came on stage, it was incredible. The funny thing is, they had as much backline as AC/DC, right?
Really?
And they were doing everything that you don't expect a soul review to do.
Yeah.
And they just, I think it was the Rainbow I saw them. They came over the Rainbow in about 74. And they were incredible.
Yeah, Sly Stone.
I've
they
still got
were
the
a rock
vinyl.
band, really. A rock soul band, weren't they? They
Yeah,
treated
if
it.
you
They were a
did-
gang, which I really like. They just came across as this gang who just
If you want to
together.
get, if any of you people out there want to get a good Sly Stone album, buy the one that's called Fresh.
Yeah.
That's a great album still.
Yeah,
Put it on now, and it's just as fresh,
Sad
pardon the
news.
pun, as it was recorded last week.
But yeah, I was just trying to thinking of, I suppose, cinema, because of the rise of, we were talking about it last week, well, I'm guilty as charged, Amazon, Netflix, whatever, Disney's, Paramount, we all sit at home on our big tellies.
Yeah.
But it's a shame, because I wonder will there be a film that will come along that will, through those mediums, that will change popular culture. But for quite a number of years, a film could change popular culture, and I think a good example. Is there anyone you can think of, Chris, or anything like that?
Not really. I think we're
changed points of view and that kind of thing.
I think we're waiting for something. Actually, we don't realise it, but I think we're waiting for something because maybe I'm getting old, but it seems to me a lot of the music I'm hearing is other stuff I've heard revisited.
Yeah.
Nothing new has come up. You know, when you talk about, we talk about the Beatles again. When that came up, people don't realise that before the Beatles, it was quite tame, and then all of a sudden there's this innovation of recording and songwriting, and there's been little parts of that as we've been discussing. All the different artists, but there's not many that have actually changed the course of recording and everything.
Trainspotting, that had a big influence, didn't it? It wasn't what you would call a music-based film, but a lot of good music came out of it. And I mean, you might even say Bridget Jones with some of the songs. I don't know. I'm asking you.
I think the era of bands being in films kind of ended with the Beatles, and you get. I mean, the Spice Girls released a film that was pretty awful, and
that's good.
And then you have. So Saltburn made a big difference in terms of what gets requested at when I'm DJing, and it kind of brought back Sophie Ellis-Bextor and like a few other songs. And then you've got maybe A Star Is Born with Lady Gaga was quite influential. And then the recent biopics, so the Freddie Mercury one and the Elton John one.
Yeah, that's the way it's been going, hasn't it? I mean, I'm really excited about the planned 4 films on each individual of the Beatles, which is.
But it's not really the same if it's not them in the film. If it's somebody acting, pretending to be them.
Interesting. It's funny you should say that because the next thing I want to talk about with Dale is tribute bands, which we've spoken off. We've been on our legendary phone calls for 45 minutes instead of doing a podcast. But it's a bit like that, isn't it? It's I think I'd be nervous if I was the producer of the films doing John Lennon and that. But I always thought that you could never. I thought John Lennon, Elvis Presley. Were unbetrayable. I didn't think you could find an actor to do it because I mean I worked on a David Bowie sort of theatre show and stuff like that, and I just thought you can't get anyone to beat David Bowie because even David Bowie's not David Bowie, it's David Jones, and he just changes his. So, but I haven't seen the Queen film and the Elton John film, and then more so the Elvis one. I thought, I was wrong. You can do it, but there is some pressure there, isn't it? I think Lennon is so hard. Lennon's going to be so difficult. I think Macca you can do, Ringo, and even George, but Lennon, I think that's going to be a tough one. And I think I think the people watching it will be ready as sort of judging it from the first minute it comes in. Be interesting.
He was saying about The Star Is Born. Now that is more about the story than the artist. Where the Beatles one it's all about the Beatles,
Yeah.
And even Elvis to a degree, but. With The Star Is Born, I mean, I remember going to the cinema to see the Chris Christopherson and the Barbra Streisand. Great film, and I was a little bit worried when they were going to do it again, but Lady Gaga's film was great. But there again, in its own time, I think it was originally David Niven and Judy Garland or something.
Oh, really?
And then there was one. There was one before that even, which I didn't say. I think it's been made 4 times now, so it's quite clearly about the power of the story.
Yeah,
it's
a classic story. But so I was talking about tribute bands. Dale, would you be offended if you saw a Stray tribute band?
No, I wouldn't.
Because I've just been meaning to ask you that for ages. Because that must be very weird as it's your brand, it's your band, and it's your passion, and then you pick up the paper and go, hang on, Wolverhampton strayed. So I just wondered how you feel.
It would depend how it was billed. if it was blatantly ripping
Don Brimham,
ripping me off, I would be upset. But I've actually seen bands do my songs.
Yeah, which must be lovely. I would imagine.
Which is it's a great compliment.
Yeah.
But
our band actually going, thinking, hang on, I want that gig. I can't play with them.
It's funny because some while ago I was at a venue. I was sitting in the dressing room and the promoter came in to me and he said, I've just had a phone call this afternoon. I said, yeah. He said, he wanted to know, is it really Stray tonight or is it a Stray tribute band? So me being smart, said,
asking what he wants
depends
to
how
hear.
much you want to pay me, because normally the tribute bands get paid more.
Yeah, they do, don't they? I mean, I'm going to over the next couple of weeks. I'm going to try and get some authors in of books, and someone I know from this manor had written a book about Billy Joel, and his name's John Brett, and lined him up. We're going to get him in, but talking of that about tribute acts, his name was Michael DeGuys, okay, and he was in a Billy Joel tribute band, right, really good one, and he was so good that Billy Joel went to see him, and then he got him in his band. Billy Joel got him in his band to do the sound checks.
I can give you another,
and he's still in the band to this day. I mean, what a dream to like. It's me like me doing, when I took the Who, Tommy on the road, and then Pete Townsend going, "Oh, I like you. Do you want to be in the Who?" It's like, yes, please.
Yeah.
And John Anderson as well.
I was just about to say John Anderson.
Oh yeah, you tell the John Anderson one. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing. I think it was his road manager said, "I've just seen this tribute band, a Yes tribute band, and they're brilliant." So he went to see them, and. Even John Anderson had to say they sound more like Yes than Yes do now.
Yeah.
And they are brilliant.
They are good, yeah?
Yeah.
It is funny. I mean, there's a lot of... it became sort of judgmental, didn't it? Oh, like it was, I think, in the 80s when I was in covers bands. And covers bands, and we'll talk about it another day, because they are so important, being in a covers band. We were talking about earlier about U2 and Queen having great stagecraft. Well, where you learn your stagecraft is... Not at Wembley Stadium. It's in the Bottom Club at New Bradwell, which is a place, or a working men's club, for listeners. That's where you learn your stagecraft. We're doing To Not Stop Playing is a great example. Tribute bands. I mean, what are your feelings? I think they're great, and I think they've kept a lot of musicians ticking over and enjoying the experience of travelling around and playing in bands. I mean, there's a really good friend of mine, Rod Spark, up in Edinburgh. Brilliant Hammond organ player. And he's in the Small Fakers, we're talking about, And over there, and Paul Weller's in the audience watching them and having a drink with them. And he's living the life, he's living the dream, as I say. Yeah. It might not be a dream in the back of a transit van going up and down England all the time, but he's having a great time. And people go, they shouldn't be that, they shouldn't be doing it, go and write your own songs. I disagree. I think if you're a musician and you have every right to cover people's tunes and just go and enjoy it. Do you agree, Dale?
I've got mixed feelings about it.
Okay, go on then.
And I don't know why.
What, you think they're stealing some of the original band's thunder? You mentioned there where they perhaps be getting more money than the original bands.
I think it's the way some of them are promoted. Because, for example, I was doing a show at a theatre, and there was a couple of like stands promoting the show that was coming on the following week, and it blatantly said Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers with a picture of Tom Petty.
No, that's wrong.
And I've seen a lot of them advertised like that, but in very small writing, a tribute to
that's not
or something like that.
No, I totally agree with that. And have they become a lazy option for promoters? I think that's the thing, because when I was promoting, as I say,
and a lazy option to musicians as well.
You had to go and find good bands, and I used to go down to the West End of London and find a lot of the cover bands there were people who were playing in the theatre shows, and they'd do the theatre shows and then go and play a session at the pub afterwards. But they're all top players. They all want their own money, and I matched the money. I just had the manager up here in Milton Keynes, Bletchley. I said to him, if we're going to build an audience, we want really good. And I understood that people wanted cover bands, and that's what we did. And we matched the money, and word soon got round. You know how small the musical circle is in the West End of London, that there was this bloke in Bletchley taking the bands up. They all got fed up at London. They just wanted to come up. And I just wonder if promoters just sort of took the easy option, thinking, I'll get the Doors tribute and I get this, and everybody likes the Doors are coming. It's not really the case. So, yeah, I get your point. I just think, but I don't want to stop musicians playing. That's probably that's the bit in me. I like young people playing, playing. Any age people playing. I just think, you shouldn't get too hung up about it. But I take your point on it. Take your point. On that, I suppose the next thing really is AI, but that's a big subject. As in, will it be tribute bands, or will it be what they call holograms standing in front of you? You're playing. I really fear for it. I think that's one for another day. We'll go up, but we'll come back to it. But as we leave, I just want to the death of the home stereo, because I did raise that at the one, and a sad day for me, because this is our generation that the home stereo in the front room was the place to be. And, you know, most of the settees, front room in London was a weird experience, really, because most people, you know, kept the front room for funerals or engagement parties. No, seriously. And my friend, I never saw his front room. He lived across the road from me. I never went in it because his mum sort of locked it and had plastic all over the settees and all these kind of things, because it was just never used. It's if the vicar come round or someone important. I wasn't important enough for the front room. My front room, thankfully, in Walthamstow, Blackhawks Lane, was my sanctuary, because it had my dad's stereo in it, and it was the music room. Wasn't really a front room. And the reason I'm saying that stereo was, I can't remember what it was. It wasn't a Separates. It was a decent one. But then that obsession with the hi-fi grew. And I remember when I first moved into my house, on Netherfield, it's called up here, on big estate, the first thing that went in was not a telly, wasn't a settee. You know where I'm going.
Yeah.
It was the Separates and some speakers.
It's not a dance.
And then like put the kettle on. You know, kettle, tea bags, milk, and the stereo. And it's just, I feel like we've lost something. I mean, so I've got John Lewis's and have a look round, and they've got these fantastic music boxes and all that, but it's just, it's not the same. But again, I've got some Separates at home. I haven't given it up. I've got it. But do you miss the days of that? And your dad, I know, had he was, because it wasn't our generation as well. This was before it as well, wasn't it? Radiograms were a statement, weren't they?
Yeah. My dad always had the best radiograms of the time, you know. And I remember when I was a very small child, you know, he had the one unit, you know, and you had to put them on individually, you know, 78s and things. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he was a real character, and he had this. It's quite funny actually. One of his pride and joy, and the one I remember as I was a teenager, was he had this big unit, and it looked like, for me, it looked like a Hammond organ. It was a big, lovely wooden. It was a flash cocktail cabinet,
right?
Because the bottom was the doors
open.
You
did get them with glasses and all that.
The doors opened, gold quilt inside, mirror, all the glasses and the bottles in the bottom. Then on the left-hand side was a Garrard turntable that you could pull out on a drawer and load the singles on.
Brilliant.
And then on the right-hand side was the radiogram, and it had VHF. And my dad was funny because he'd always give you the mark of a good radiogram is if you put VHF on and you get the control.
Yeah.
And you could find... I remember sitting there one night, we were listening to the local police and ambulances coming by. Hear that? That's only up the road from here. You know, or taxi drivers, you know, they were using that wavelength.
A great example how bad the telly was in this period.
Yeah. And you know
sitting
what?
there listening to police.
The ironic thing was about that was that my dad was in the Second World War, right? And obviously he'd been 5 years fighting the Germans. What radiogram did he buy? A Blaupunkt. A Blaupunkt stereo. He was advised by the bloke who used to come round. I mean, this says something as well, doesn't it? We used to have a bloke who come round who was the TV and radio repairman.
Yeah. Brown coat.
Yeah. The name that goes with the trade, his name was Mr. Coyle.
Oh, really?
And he used to come round, you know, invariably it was a valve or something. Yeah. But and he advised my dad, at the moment the Blaupunkt is the best one. So my dad's spent 5 years fighting the Germans. Was he going to call it a Blaupunkt? No, that's a blue spot.
Blue spot.
That's blue spot, that radiogram is. And then, well, we had that while I was at home, and I'll tell you the story that I think you might want to go to.
Yeah, my favourite one, yeah.
He was of the generation that used to get the words wrong.
Yeah, my
you know, they all did. Yeah. You know, my mum was telling everyone that I was going to stay on and get my GEC certificates. Not that I ever worked for General Electric Company, but I know what she meant. But she was, you know, all those things like that. I mean, her and my aunt were a bit like Les Dawson and Roy Barraclough, you know, all that sort
Sadly,
of
I'm getting much like it. My daughter, Faye, no, Sally, no, Lorella, no, you know, just like terrible.
When I've left home and I've gone back a few years later, and my dad's showing me his new stereo. Well, this new stereo he bought looked like it was a DJ's desk.
Oh, really?
Because it had gone from the piece of wood furniture to like something on like metal legs.
Oh, nice.
Metal legs, glass top.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Perspex, and you lift it up, and in front of you, instead of having two decks, you've got a deck and the radio.
Yeah.
So he said, "Come in the front room, boy, and have a listen to what I've done with my stereo." So I said, "What have you done with it?" He said, "Have a listen," and I'm sure that's where I got it from. But he always used to play records loud.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Or even when I was a little kid, it was always loud. Plays it loud. So on this, and it was get the record, get the arm,
Yeah.
straight on the record, and he played this record, and he's walked away all very proud. He said, "What do you think of that, then, boy?" I said, "It sounded good, Dad. What you done to it?" He said, "Well, I went out the other day and I bought myself a new diamond syphilis for it, priceless, you know." But yeah,
Very good.
For the people who don't know, he did mean stylus.
Yeah. Just one thing before we shoot off and have a break. As in, you're talking about your dad and his stereo, and obviously my dad. It wasn't my stereo; it was my dad's. And again, he had a pioneer. I remember the time we got to Bletchley Milton Keynes, he must have got some money for the move. Because again, never mind a new car or anything for the wife. Same old Hoover that we had.
Stereo.
25 stereo pioneer, 25 watts per channel, which is still that's pretty decent, lad. And I remember coming back in from the pub one day, and any day really, every day. And my dad was sitting there with his great big headphones on. You know the ones that got volume on, and all that. Like two great big mugs.
Like working for the RAF.
Hey, what are you listening to? And he said, "Oh, BB King," and I like BB King. I mean, probably because I was half cut and had 2 pints of shandy. I just thought, he said BB King. I want to hear that, and I just thought if I turn the volume right up, I'll be able to hear it. I forgot that he was on the headphones. It just sort of went blank. And it's the only time I've ever heard my dad swear. In all the time. I mean, we watched England getting beat by the Germans in 1970, and he cried that day.
Funny enough, my dad
No,
never
they
swore.
didn't do that. Generation didn't swear, which I completely applaud. I think it's a beautiful thing to do. But this night, they just walked in and went, "Oh yeah, great!" And I could hear it coming out. And it's like, "Oh fuck!" Like, "What are you doing?" We both just fell about laughing. It was just one of them things you do when you've had perhaps too many shandies. I do miss it. You do miss your dad, don't you? I do miss him around. He was such a great character. But yeah, when I think about it, he was just sitting there in his own little world, enjoying his BB King.
My mum and dad were not unlike Alf Garnett. And
I think everybody's right. I think we all. That's why Alf Garnett was so popular. We all associated.
He'd sit in the corner in the front room and pontificate from his armchair. And you know the funny thing was, that was so his armchair that when he passed away,
he wouldn't get in
no
that.
one else sat in it.
No, he wouldn't.
Not
sit
for
in that,
ages did anyone sit in
my
that
dad
chair.
wasn't like that. No, he looked like a thing. But there you go. We've been talking about our generation, and we're going to go international, perhaps with the next one. We'll let you know about that when you tune in. But thanks for putting up with us, listeners, and especially thanks to Chris for producing us again and giving us his opinions. So there you go.
He's the phantom knob twiddler that sits on the other side.
He is. Thank you.